We're going to turn now to Ken Buck, who is another Republican candidate for the Senate who is backed by the Tea Party out in Colorado. He joins us from our studio in New York. Mr. Buck, you just heard Marco Rubio. Your opponents say that you are an extremist. Are you?
No. Plain and simple, no.
Why?
Well, if being $13 trillion in debt, if having $100 trillion of unfunded liabilities, if running a vehicle off the cliff is extreme, then they're the extremists. I'm the candidate that wants to get away from that and is working very hard with the citizens of Colorado to make sure that we do get away from that.
What would you do if you are elected and you come to Washington? What's the first thing you would do to get out of control spending under control?
I think we need to look at some sort of constitutional balanced budget amendment or spending limit and some formula that keeps spending under control. We are clearly heading off a cliff. The Tea Party movement, the grassroots movement in Colorado recognizes that Republicans are every bit as much to blame for where we are right now as Democrats. But we have to find some discipline from outside of Washington, D.C. and impose it on our Congress and executive branch.
You heard last week when Republicans here in Washington proposed a series of tax cuts from the wealthiest Americans to some in the lowest income brackets. Democrats say that if you put those wealthy Americans, add them on to the tax cuts that they too are proposing, which are going to increase the federal deficit, that it would just send it through the roof. How do you come down on those tax cuts? Are the tax cuts worth it for the deficit spending it's going to cause?
Well, it's interesting language. I don't see it as tax cuts. They talk about extending the Bush tax cuts. We have a tax rate right now. Increasing that tax rate, to me, is a tax increase. I also think you have to look at where do families cut. If we don't maintain our tax rates where they are right now, what do families have to give up in order to pay for the government spending, the overspending that's going on in the federal government? I come down on the side of low taxes because I think it's going to generate jobs in this economy.
So would you agree, if there were no other alternative, to extend the tax cuts for the lower income Americans if the bill did not include tax cuts for the upper income Americans?
I think we have to extend tax cuts for all, and I'm going to work towards that end. Obviously, any tax cuts that maintaining our current tax rates for any group is better than nothing, but I'm in favor of maintaining our current tax rates for all Americans.
Mr. Buck, you took some fairly absolutist positions in the primary on some social issues. On abortion, for example, you said you would never vote to confirm a pro-abortion candidate to any federal position. Do you still hold to that?
Well, what I said was that I wouldn't, and I won't use abortion as a litmus test, but if someone is pro-abortion, not just pro-choice, not just believing that abortion should be rare, limited, but if someone is promoting abortion, I think that goes beyond the pale, goes outside the boundaries of normal politics, and I will not support a candidate that is pro-abortion. I
don't understand that. You say you won't support a candidate who's pro-abortion, but you won't use that as a litmus test. That is a litmus test, is it not?
I won't use abortion as a litmus test with a pro-choice individual. Someone that is an activist on the abortion issue, I think, goes outside the pale, and I cannot support an activist on the abortion issue.
You also said at one point that you would support a proposed law out there in Colorado that would have banned some forms of birth control, some birth control pills. Do you still hold to that?
I have never said that, no. I have said that there is an amendment, there is a state amendment on personhood. I have said that I am in favor of personhood as a concept. I am not taking a position on any of the state amendments, and I have said over and over again, and it has been reported over and over again, that I am not in favor of banning any common forms of birth control in Colorado or in the United States.
All right, so we've cleared that one up. Let me ask you about something else I read in the papers out there, that at one point you were in favor of turning veterans hospitals over to people in the private sector to run. Is that what you said?
You're getting the Democrat speaking points here. I appreciate the opportunity.
These come from newspaper clippings, but I want to hear your side of it. Obviously, that's why I asked.
Sure. What I said, I was asked a question about the Veterans Administration, and I said if we could improve the quality and care for veterans by outsourcing some of the functions, such as running a Veterans Administration hospital, I would be in favor of doing that. And I think that it's important. Also, as part of that answer, I said that I think that we'd have to look at the cost, and the cost can't come out of the veterans' pockets. The cost would have to come out of the government if there was a cost involved in that outsourcing. But I think that the private sector runs operations like hospitals and other operations better than the government. If we can reduce the deficit and provide better quality of care for our veterans, I'm in favor of doing things like that.
What do you have in common with these other Tea Party candidates across the country, like Christine O'Donnell in Delaware, maybe the people running in some of these other races like Marco Rubio? Do you see yourself as part of a national party, the Tea Party?
I see myself as part of a group of candidates who have been elected in this country because of frustration with what's happening in Washington, D.C. I think there are some similarities, there are some differences across the country. The one thing that we have in common is a firm belief that the Constitution should govern our role in Washington, D.C. We recognize the frustration for both what the Republican Party and the Democrat Party have been doing in Washington, D.C. And we're going there not to be part of the establishment, not to be part of the what we consider the problem in Washington, D.C., but to get there and to reduce spending, to promote ideas like a balanced budget amendment and term limits and ideas that have been talked about for a while in D.C. They have been sold to voters in various states as positive ideas, but they haven't really been worked on very hard in Washington, D.C.
All right. Well, Mr. Buck, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Very enlightening to get your positions out there.